Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine, for just a second, building a structure so unbelievably far ahead of its time that the entire world literally dubbed it the eighth wonder of the world. I mean, it was the ultimate beacon of human ambition. Now, I want you to picture that exact same monumental structure sitting totally abandoned. The doors are chained shut, the lights are out, and it's practically swallowed by overgrown weeds right in the middle of one of America's biggest cities. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are unpacking the incredible, sky-high rise and the honestly heartbreaking decline of the Houston Astrodome.
It really begs this massive question. How exactly does a civic masterpiece turn into a multi-million-dollar problem? We aren't just talking about some random building here. This venue hosted the Super Bowl. It housed absolute cultural icons. And to go from that glorious history to locked gates and pitch darkness, it's staggering. It's this gigantic problem that nobody really wants to pay for, just sitting there in plain sight. So, to figure out how a triumph becomes a municipal tragedy, we really have to look at why it was built in the first place. Section 1. Beating the Texas Heat, the 1960s Challenge.
To get the Astrodome, you've got to rewind the clock back to the 1960s. Houston had this undeniable hurdle. It was a booming city, but man, that Texas heat was absolutely brutal. If you spent a summer down south, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Outdoor sports were sweltering. Actually, scratch that, they were totally unbearable. Everyone was miserable. So the city realized that if they wanted to truly put themselves on the map for major professional sports, they desperately needed a massive, ambitious solution to literally conquer the climate.
Enter the Astrodome. When it opened in 1965, it was the very first fully domed, air-conditioned sports stadium on the planet. But here's the catch. Because it was a fully enclosed dome, the natural grass inside didn't get enough sunlight and it completely died. So they literally had to invent a brand new product just to survive indoors. Yep, that's where AstroTurf comes from. It's such a crazy example of how this building pushed the boundaries of what was even possible back then. But flash forward to today, and the place is just empty.
Section 2. Changing sports preferences. The shift in sports.
We can basically break the doom of this legendary structure down into three major cascading phases. First, a drastic shift in sports preferences. Second, a mounting maintenance nightmare. And third, the rising and heavily scrutinized cost of public funds. These three steps are the perfect roadmap for understanding why modern cities struggle so much with these colossal white elephants. So let's look at that first step.
As time ticked on, the Astrodome started bleeding its major sports teams. And the contrast here brilliantly illustrates why. On one hand, you've got the aging Astrodome, which completely lacked modern amenities. On the other hand, modern sports franchises started demanding the big moneymakers, luxury suites, premium club seats, massive high-def scoreboards. The old bones of the dome just weren't built to support those heavy structural and electrical upgrades easily. So eventually, teams like the Houston Astros made the tough call to pack up. They moved over to what's now Daikin Park, which offered fans a modern, open-air, retractable roof experience.
Section 3. The Maintenance Nightmare. Weathering the dome.
Once the teams vacated the premises, we transitioned from a bustling venue to an absolute maintenance nightmare. You see, looking after a giant dome is not like managing a typical office building. It takes a massive physical and financial toll. That notoriously humid Houston weather we talked about, it relentlessly attacks the steel and concrete foundation. Just keeping the structure standing, just making sure it's stable and safe enough for someone to walk near, requires millions of dollars in continuous upkeep. The local climate is literally fighting the building every single day. Now, it's not for a lack of trying. Over the years, people have floated these incredibly ambitious proposals to rescue the dome. Like, how about an indoor theme park? Well, the numbers were just way too high. Okay, what about a massive convention space? Same story. Local governments couldn't agree on who is actually going to foot the bill. Millions of dollars have been spent just on feasibility studies, throwing ideas at the wall to see what sticks. But the brutal math of retrofitting such a gigantic, unique space, it just hasn't panned out.
Section 4. The taxpayer dilemma. Public funds. When private money can't fix a problem of this size, the burden inevitably shifts to the public. Building stadiums with taxpayer money is already a hot-button issue, right? But deciding to spend hundreds of millions on an old, abandoned structure, that meets some intense public pushback. It all comes down to opportunity cost. In economics, this means the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. Basically, a city only has so much money. If Houston pours hundreds of millions into saving the Astrodome, that's cash that simply cannot be spent anywhere else in the city.
And the real-world sacrifices of that opportunity cost are immense.
Studies show that when governments tie up their resources in abandoned megastructures, it leaves a lot less in the pot for essential public services. We're talking about losing funding for public parks where families hang out. We're talking about neglecting the transit systems people rely on to get to work, or stretching emergency resources thin. When taxpayer money gets locked into a colossal white elephant, the whole community has to sacrifice other critical improvements. It's a really heavy burden to weigh.
I want to share this quote with you because it perfectly hits the nail on the head for everything we've covered in this explainer. Building a monument is only half the battle. Planning for its future is the real challenge. It's a stark reminder of the tightrope civic leaders have to walk. It's an incredible thing to build a world wonder, to push the absolute limits of engineering, like they did back in '65. But without smart, forward-thinking municipal planning, those historical monuments can easily turn into massive financial anchors, dragging down future generations. So what does this all mean? We're left with a profound question. Do we preserve history, or do we fund the future? What should actually be done with the Astrodome? It's a genuine dilemma between honoring a vital piece of architectural history and making practical choices for a city's ongoing health. Should they finally just bring in the wrecking ball? Or does the once glorious eighth wonder of the world deserve to be saved at literally any cost? I really want you to think about that. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating piece of history in today's explainer. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.